So as Tamika said, I'm a student immigration specialist here at UK. And prior to that, I spent 3 years in Italy, kind of between study and time that I was working. And that's where I learned most of my home cooking skills. So a lot of my cooking is really connected to Italian culture. And so that was kind of the inspiration for this idea is part of cooking is a way to access the world. And I think for a lot of us, we're in a situation where our access to travel is really limited. And so cooking has been a great way to kind of reconnect with some of those cultures that I miss being able to visit in person. And so today we'll be talking about the role of home cooking and strategies to expand repertoire and resources in Lexington to shop for international ingredients and dine out as a way to regain access to countries and cultures that we feel disconnected from or distanced from right now. We probably all felt like, a year ago, 2 years ago, we would be ready to travel again. And for a lot of people, that is possible. But for many of us, and I put myself in this category, the kind of access that I had before just isn't back in the same kind of way. And then during our last section, our plan is for Karen to be doing a live demo of a Japanese dish and kind of talk about how to work that into maybe family meal planning, things like that. We did have a little bit of a technical issue, so hopefully she'll be able to join us for that, but that will be the last section of our presentation. So we'll also be talking about food and literature and how maybe characters or memoirists are connected to food in terms of memory. We'll talk about simplicity and design of cooking and talk about grocery options, ways to use substitutions, talk a little bit about restaurants, and then we'll have our live demo. And food serves a lot of purposes for us, right? So it brings us energy, right? Food is just basic energy. But it also brings us comfort, can heal us. It helps us create memories. We have a lot of connection to memories through food. Home cooking can provide us the chance to slow down, engage our senses, and be creative. And that's a way that we can kind of access some of the balance that we're talking about in a big picture in this conference today, right? It's an opportunity to take some time away that's productive, right? That's in cooking a meal for yourself, for your family, for loved ones. But that is also a time to kind of maybe slow down and get out of the pace of work or other stresses that you're experiencing at this time, but really anytime. Cooking with children, either including their help or cooking for a family that includes children, can help those kids develop a positive connection with the diverse ingredients and become more adventurous in their food choices. It can be hard to get kids to eat stuff, right? But engaging them, being able to have their help, and then also having them maybe connect the dish with a story or with an idea of another place can make it more exciting and make them more willing to maybe try something new that they might not otherwise do. And I'll now turn it over for this slide to Karen, who is now with us.
Sorry, folks. Thank you so much for joining Franny and I. I'm Karen Slaymaker, Assistant Director for International Student Scholar Services, a colleague with Franny. And, we love to talk about food and we love to talk about books. And so two that we mention here are Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. Michelle Zauner is known by maybe some younger folks about a band that she's a part of, Japanese Breakfast. But she tells a story that's woven through food, combining her love for her mother and memories of cooking with her mother. And so the book is a memoir, but it also just shares how much food can be a part of our memories and a part of our experiences. We recently had a book club with this book, and we were a diverse group of women, and we were all able to share some of those memories that we have, maybe connecting with a parent's culture or grandparents and others. So wonderful book. I highly recommend Crying in H Mart. Another one that Franny and I have talked about is Stanley Tucci's Taste, My Life Through Food. It's, again, a wonderful book about his life, and growing up in the United States, but also his family traveling to Italy when he was a young boy, and his mother really learning to cook in Italy. It's a tour of a country, enriching family life through food. And then he also shares the challenges of being an extended family living together 24/7 during the pandemic. And so that chapter, I laughed till I cried, believe it or not, as we can all kind of share in that experience of being together so much and enjoying that, but also some of those challenges.
And so one of the things that we've kind of talked about that can make food really accessible and make it part of those family traditions is really using a base. So sometimes it can be hard to keep home cooking part of your daily life, especially as you go through big changes. I know my husband and I, through moves, we have young twins. Those changes and those shifts have made it, challenging sometimes to expand our repertoire or to continue those kind of traditions. But we've also looked for ways to maybe simplify so that we can preserve things like, the birthday cakes that we make for each other that we learned about in Italy or through Italian recipes, or the New Year's traditions for good fortune that we use. But some of that is really just making sure that you have a really good base that you can build from. And so that's a really great idea to help us through learning about maybe new cuisines as well. So not just preserving the ones that we already know about, but maybe expanding our repertoire as well. Because learning a new cuisine can feel overwhelming, but sometimes finding a common thread like a spice combination or flavor combination can make it more accessible and can mean that you can provide access to many more dishes than you might have expected. So one of the examples that I always look to for Italian cooking, one of the things that made Italian cooking really open up for me cooking inside the US is Marcella Hazan's cookbooks. And she's someone who came from an Italian family, but was cooking inside the US and really made a cookbook that was for people cooking inside the US, but who wanted those really authentic flavors and combinations. And so finding resources or even finding just a combination that does those kind of things that can give you, that taste that you associate with that cuisine can really help you kind of build from that, but keep it simple as well. She's really good at telling you when you can use something that's canned versus when it's fresh, when you can use a vegetable substitution, something that might not be easy to find in the US. And how to kind of make it, or, it's asking you to have a giant fennel bowl, but you're not going to be able to find that. So how can you kind of make that flavor be enhanced since the actual ingredient itself isn't going to be as prominent as it would be if you were cooking in Italy. And the key here that she says is to have numerous dishes that you can cook kind of from pantry staples, that you're just going to need to add in some additional ingredients, but that really you're cooking from something that you're really comfortable with, that there's a base that you're really comfortable with. And this idea comes up as well in Stanley Tucci's. I guess we're just huge fans of Stanley Tucci. And he's just been having such a great conversation about food and its role in family and in personal history as well. So I've been watching a lot more television than I normally do. And his show is something that I really enjoy, specifically for me, because Italian cooking is something that's really important to me. But also it's just a great way of accessing that culture. And he does a great kind of tour of the country through these tastes and flavors that are specifically regional. But one of the really good examples that he gives is an Italian example. And these are Roman dishes where you can really kind of just swap out a few ingredients and make different dishes from just a couple of simple ingredients. So a Roman dish that is just really basic that you can just throw together, but has a really rich flavor that Romans really associate with Rome, that other people do as well, is the pasta alla gricia. Is just oil, some pepper, and guanciale, which is, we can use bacon or pancetta here, but it's a really sort of rich pork that is cured. And and that's kind of your base. But if you swap out that bacon and you put in pecorino, so hard cheese, then suddenly you have cacio e pepe, which is another famous dish, but has a really different flavor, has a really different flavor profile, even though the base ingredients are really very similar. You add in some egg and suddenly you've got carbonara. Again, it's rich in a different way, but that you can just kind of swap these things around and quickly have a meal that feels really, tied to that place.
And I'll just say a word about Japanese cooking. We tend to start with rice for meals, and sometimes there'll be noodles swapped out, but it's really easy to start with rice when you have a rice cooker and you get that cooking, and then you're preparing the vegetables and the meat. And as a new cook, it was always hard for me to think about how to get it all to come out at the same time, right? That timing of things. And so rice cookers, when I take our international students shopping to Walmart or other places when they first arrive, rice cookers are definitely one of the things on their list to get. And again, shopping on a daily basis. When I was in Japan, vegetable shops were nearby, and it was so we tended to cook by the season, and so that was a lovely way to learn to cook. And so how to bring that back into our life here as well.
And I'll just talk quickly also about Indian cuisine. There are so many options for Indian cuisine in restaurants in Lexington and the surrounding areas. And Indian food can frequently feel inaccessible to me. I don't know necessarily how to prepare vegetables, how to do these things. But my best friend's parents came to the US from India, and she was really in the last few years gotten very interested in cooking dishes that her mother cooked while she was growing up as well, which were in the US with US ingredients, but the dishes that she knew from home. And one of the things that I found is that there are some simple things that I can pair maybe with takeout or even dishes from Trader Joe's that can make it feel like I am contributing. It's part of something that I'm doing. And I don't have to take on the whole responsibility of making that whole dish, be responsible for all those delicious flavors that I want to have. And so one of the examples is a yogurt and cucumber salad called raita, which can be paired with lots of dishes. You can use it to cool something down. You can use it to kind of cut things up. But it's just a spice mixture with the yogurt, cucumber, and sometimes tomato. And it can really make it feel like I'm part of that meal in a way that I wouldn't if it were just takeout. She's also taught me about spice bases. So, toasting some coriander seeds, some cumin seed, a couple other spices, maybe some curry in there. And that can be used for a variety of different things that would otherwise be kind of plain. So dal or beans or peas. And so once I've got that down, then I kind of have access to a lot more. And then, one of the really wonderful things about home cooking, one of the most fulfilling things can be using your creativity. Sometimes you just want to get the flavor, but sometimes you really want to kind of play with the dish. And that can be part of, what you're using to find your own balance, to bring in your own creativity. And cooking and eating obviously is a very sensory experience, whether it's a simple or complicated dish, but sometimes the preparation can be the primary content. So Karen has an example of the obento.
Yeah, so you probably have heard the word obento before, and it basically means a lunchbox or, something served in a box. Sometimes obento is served in restaurants as well. And it's a feast for the eyes, really, of all the colors and the textures. This happens to be a children's lunchbox, something that a child might take to school with them. And you can see, little bits of things rather than a big portion of one thing. So the variety, and in Japan and Japanese food, you tend to take a little bit of each thing, like a bite of rice and then a bite of meat and then a bite, and kind of go around the obento box and and enjoy a little bit of each thing. And you can say that, wow, that'd be a lot of work each morning. And it is work, but a lot of times folks are preparing pieces of it that they'll use all week long, like the carrots cut in flowered shapes and those kinds of things. So it's kind of a feast for the eyes as well.
And an example that I wanted to share from Italian cooking is the pasta dish, pasta alla Norma. And this dish is deliciously rich in flavor from the tomato and the eggplant and the cheese as well. So it really has just all of those flavors really pop in that dish. But its fame kind of comes from the picture that it paints. So this Sicilian dish represents the deep colors of the Sicilian sun and the landscape. And then the cheese represents the snow falling on the peaks of the mountains. And that's where that mountain is represented by the mound of pasta on the plate. And this presentation gives the dish just creative layers beyond the aroma and taste. It really gives this extra sensory component that makes it really beautiful. And it's just one of my favorite dishes, just by flavor, but also kind of the narrative of it. I just love.
So we wanted to share with you some of our favorite places to shop for some different kinds of ingredients. So we're trying to travel the world through food. Up there on the top, the Dongyang Market is right on Clay's Mill. And I must say it's one of the places, because it's not so far from where I live, that I tend to go, even if I'm not cooking Asian food per se, but I love their fresh vegetables and things. So you can also find Middle Eastern grocery stores, African grocery stores when I have events with our international students, and trying to get a little taste from home is fun to do with them. And then the Mexican restaurants or grocery stores, there are plenty of those around Lexington, lots of locations for those. One opened here on Southland Drive that has a taqueria connected to it. So I must admit, our family has either tacos, burritos, or enchiladas from there almost on a weekly basis, because they're so delicious and inexpensive. Lots of international grocery stores as well. The European Delights Bakery. If you've not made it down to Brannan Road, you need to. It's a excellent little bakery. They have a little place where you can eat there, as well as do takeout, and just beautiful baked goods there as well. And then if you want to venture a little further, there's Jungle Gyms up in Cincinnati, which again, I've taken international students, and it's wonderful to see their eyes when they've said, a student from Ghana one time said, "This squash, I haven't eaten it in 3 years, Karen. I don't care how much it costs. I'm buying this to take home and to cook myself." So that's great too. But Kroger, Meijer, Walmart, they all have world food aisles as well. And so there are ways to just add a little bit of variety and travel through your cooking.
And one of the things that you can kind of do, one of the challenges is maybe sometimes finding those ingredients, but one of the things that you can do is to use some of those groceries for cross-cultural substitution. So we do have access to so many of these wonderful shops that are going to have, ingredients that might be more challenging to find. But you can sometimes even, without going to the specific grocery store for that culture, find things that you'll be able to use. So this is, one of the things that I learned from my best friend as well, talking to her about how her mom shopped as she was growing up, that, she was always kind of looking to Mexican grocery stores, for example, to find vegetables that she wasn't finding them kind of bigger grocery stores in their area. An example here is that Lexington has had many Italian shops or little grocery stores over the years, but sometimes it can be difficult to find consistent access to some of the elements that can really make a meal. So something that's going to have, the same flavor, the same amounts. A lot of times that's going to be the issue, being able to get the amount that I need for a particular dish. And the internet can be a great tool, so you can order stuff online, but sometimes shipping can be hugely expensive or even prohibitive if you're looking for fresh ingredients. But one strategy is to see where overlap there is with other cuisines. So this example here is, actually my best friend was visiting Lexington. We went to just do kind of a sample shop in Agua Caliente, but we were looking specifically for things that we could use in Italian cooking and Indian cooking. And so, one of the things that really stuck out to me was the dried anchovy. In Kroger, you can find anchovies, but it's going to be a paste or it's going to be an oil. But in Italy, you're really going to find this wide variety of what kind of anchovies they have and how they're prepared. And that's really going to change how it comes across in your dish. So finding a dried anchovy at this Mexican grocery store is a real win for being able to make some of those dishes that I know are more challenging to make here. The amounts for whole cumin, whole coriander seed were spot on for the amount that you might need in Indian cooking or in sometimes even in Italian cooking. Whereas, in a Kroger or Meyer, you might have a smaller amount, or even just the price. If you can get that big amount, it's going to be, several times the price as in this grocery store. There's also a wide selection of dal, chickpeas, dried beans, and those are going to be good for both of those cuisines. And then my best friend really pointed out the rose petals were something that are hard to find, but it is something that she uses in Indian cooking as well. And like I said, access to those fresh ingredients that can be challenging. Crema and other cheeses can be hard to find, but there are going to be a lot of those fresh cheeses that might not be exactly the same, but can be substituted in Italian cooking or in Indian cooking as well. So this was just an example shop. I encourage you to visit some of these grocery stores, take a look, see what you find, and you'll probably, experience that there are things you didn't expect or things that you've been looking for, and really be able to expand what you have access to in terms of what you're feeling comfortable preparing. And then we know that not everybody wants to be cooking at home every day. We also want to be able to have access to international cuisine out too, right? If we're traveling, we're usually not doing home cooking with ingredients there. We want to be able to go out to restaurants. And so we've highlighted just a couple here in Lexington. I wanted to draw your attention to Maddie's Authentic Peruvian Cuisine, which was opened by Maria Rivera, who many of you may have known as a colleague here at UK. She worked here for a long time, and she recently left the university to open this restaurant, and it's just opened. I haven't had a chance to try it yet, but I can't wait. And then right near campus, we've got Hamuri, which is a phenomenal Korean restaurant. And then Panda Cuisine is actually one that our Chinese community in UK or in Lexington has great things to say about. We have Chinese students who come who sometimes, when they're first getting settled, maybe eat all their food there for days as they're kind of adjusting to all the other pieces, and develop, great relationships with the owners. And that's a really wonderful restaurant that we have in Lexington that is really part of the Chinese and Chinese American culture in Lexington. We have Savs for some African cuisine. So used to be right near campus, now moved a few blocks away. And then again, right near campus, we've got Oasis for Mediterranean cuisine. Now, obviously, this is not an all-encompassing list. These were just ones that we wanted to highlight kind of by proximity, or also just to highlight because there's a connection to our community here on campus. And now we'll prepare to do the live demonstration that Karen will be doing. Here's a photo of the dish, and I'll go ahead, Karen, if it's okay, and move to the recipe so you can kind of introduce the dish.
Sure. So today we're going to be making oyaku donburi. It's a Japanese dish that I learned to make many, many years ago when I lived in Japan. It's chicken and egg, but it's also sometimes fondly called the parent and child, as you might understand why. So chicken and egg. So what I went ahead and did is, here's the recipe. And I went ahead and prepared some of the ingredients for us, and I'm going to show those to you now. So it's a simple dish using chicken, which I went ahead and chicken breast that I thinly sliced into small pieces. And then I also took the onion and sliced it in small pieces, and our shiitake mushrooms. And I want to show you the shiitake mushrooms. First, they're dried. You buy them, you can even buy these at Kroger. They're dried mushrooms, and you'll first reconstitute them so that they are soft, right? So you have the mushroom, you put them in some very warm water. And a trick I have is to put a bowl on top of the bowl to help press those mushrooms down so they're able to get soft faster. So they usually take about 20 to 20 minutes in warm water to get soft. So we have our rice cooker going. The first thing I did is I put the rice in the rice cooker, and it's ready to go. Because it stays warm there, and you don't have to worry about it sticking to the pan and those kinds of things while the other ingredients are being cooked. So I have my sauce hot here. The sauce was, again, easy ingredients to find: soy sauce, and you might not have a container this big, but we use a lot of soy sauce in my house. So soy sauce, an ingredient you may not have used before, it's called mirin. It's a sweet sake, and again, it's not mandatory. So if you didn't want to use the sake, you can just add a little bit of extra water, 1/4 cup of water, and then a tablespoon of sugar. So I get that sauce all in a pan, fry pan. Then I'm getting it nice and hot. And once that comes to a boil, then I'm going to add my all of these 3 ingredients: the chicken, the rice. The chicken, the mushrooms, and the onions are going to go in this pan. And believe it, they cook really fast. So we'll put them in, and they're getting nice and hot. And you're just going to cook it until a little bit more, until the chicken is cooked through and the onions are soft. So we'll have that cooking. And then we'll spread those mushrooms out. And again, if your children are like mine and didn't like mushrooms, you can just leave the mushrooms out. This morning, I cooked just 1 serving of this, so I'll show it to you here in a minute. So you can easily make it to suit your tastes as well. So we get that cooking. And while that's cooking, I'll wash my hands. I've cracked 4 eggs into a bowl, and I'm just going to mix them up to get those yolks all cracked and ready. That'll be our last ingredient, okay? So the chicken is cooking. Once the chicken is cooked through and the rice, the onions are tender, we're going to put our spinach on top. So I've washed the spinach, and it's just, I've torn it up a little bit. Usually this is one of those substitutions that Franny was talking about. Mitsuba is the traditional green to put in this dish. And again, we're talking about colors. So we're going to have this bright green and the yellow of the scrambled egg, the egg on top. So while that's cooking, I'm going to get the rice out. So just fill your bowl with some rice. Again, this may look like a lot, but your ingredients are going to go on top. I think you probably have seen in some places different kinds of rice bowls. So you fill your bowl with rice, and then I'm going to show you the finished product. You can see the eggs and the spinach on top. So what you do is just spoon this beautiful yellow and green and the brown of the mushrooms on top of your rice here. And your dish done. So you're able to see, again, the cooking with the eyes, you know, the experience beginning with the colors. What's happening over here is the chicken is getting done. I recommend large cooking chopsticks as well. You can mix this all together. Just take your spinach and top the spinach on it. Spread it out nicely. And then you'll put the egg on top. Spread it over. And then the most important thing is we need the lid. And you'll just cook until that egg is set.